everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Sarah. This is Brown Family Goods, and if you're anything like me, as soon as those leaves start to change outside and we get a little crispness in the air, it's time for some fall baking. So that's exactly what we're doing today. I am super excited to share with you 3 fall baking recipes that are going to not only make your house smell incredible, but they're going to taste even better than that. So we're diving into a delicious cranberry nut no-knead bread recipe, the coziest pumpkin oat cookies with a brown butter glaze, and probably my personal obsession, apple spice cupcakes with a salted caramel frosting. So grab your apron or maybe just grab a cup of coffee and sit back and relax, and let's get started baking. Alright, so before we get started with our pumpkin oat cookies, we have to brown some butter because that is what is going into this recipe. So it's going to make them really delicious. It's going to give them that warm, nutty flavor, but also it's going to go in the glaze that goes on top. So we are going to brown up. Let me just get my burner on quickly. I'm going to put it on about medium-high heat to start, and then I'll probably cut it back just a little bit once it starts to brown. So I have all my delicious ingredients here for those cookies. Scoot my mixer back until we're ready for him. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and put all the butter in at once. So we're browning the butter not only for the glaze that goes on top of these, but also for the cookies themselves. So it is about 20 tablespoons of butter, ever how many cups that is. So that is what we're starting with here. Just put those in. You can cut it down into pats if you want. You can leave it whole. It doesn't really matter. Just don't go too fast with the heat until it gets completely melted. You don't want some of it to start browning before the whole thing's already done. So moderate heat until it's melted. What we're looking for is for some of, basically it's the milk proteins in the actual butter itself that will start to brown and cook. So first of all, everything will melt. Then you'll start to see the butter foaming a little bit, and so that is the water kind of cooking out of the butter at that point. And then you'll start to see the bits at the bottom of the pan that have kind of settled down there. Those will start to get brown, kind of a nutty looking color to them. So that's why you don't want the heat to be too high, because once it starts to brown, it's going to go quickly. So just make sure you kind of keep it on medium heat. Don't overdo it. Another good tip for browning butter is to use a light colored pan. So that's why you'll see me using my stainless pan today, because I want to make sure that I can see. If I was using a black bottom pan or like a, one with a nonstick coating or something on it, it's already a dark color, so it's very hard to see when the butter is starting to change colors. So just take your time, go slowly. And then once this is browned, we'll divide out what we need for the cookies and what we need for the glaze that goes on top of the cookies. So now I'm going to turn my heat down a hair to about right underneath medium for me. So the water is starting to cook off the butter at this point, and I'm just going to give it a stir, make sure that all of my sticks of butter are melted here. You may even hear a little bit of like crackly pop in. That's just the water being released and cooked off. Okay, we're at the stage where most of the steam and everything has cooked off. Basically, all of the extra liquid that's in butter, all of the extra moisture that's in butter, it kind of cooks off, and now it's starting to calm down. It's not bubbling as vigorously and everything. This is the point where you'll see it start to change from yellow to browning. And so you just want to make sure that you're staying right with it when you're at this point. The whole process probably takes about 6 to 10 minutes, I would say. That is not a point that you would want to walk away. Because if you walked away, I need to turn this down one more click here. If you walked away and this started to brown, you would be having burnt butter instead of brown butter. Because once you start to see it brown, and then you need to immediately pull it off. That way you don't go too far with it. Changed over to my metal spoon so that I could actually see the bits if they're brown or not, because using this it was hard to tell. So we are definitely there. And now what we're going to do, I'm going to try to stir this away, that way I can show you exactly what it looks like when it's done. Right now it's foamy and bubbly, so it's a little easier when it kind of settles down. Now what we're going to do is just divide this butter melted browned butter into 1 cup and then the rest. So 1 cup is going to be for our actual cookie dough. So I'm just going to pour it straight into my 1 cup measure, and it can sit here and cool like that until I'm ready to make my dough. Kind of missed all of the brown bits there, so I'm going to put some of that into here. And then the rest will be for the glaze. So it should be, I don't know, around a little less, probably a little less than 1/4 cup will be what's left. Okay. That's probably about 3 tablespoons that's left. So I'm just going to put it over here into the into my other little bowl. All right, so that's butter browned. All right, it's time to get this cookie dough going. I'm going to use the paddle attachment on my KitchenAid, but you could definitely just whip this up by hand. It's pretty soft dough, so it should work out fine for you. So I'm going to start with creaming together my butter and my sugar. My butter is still pretty warm from just cooking it, so I want to cool it down a bit. So by adding in the sugars, I should be able to do that. So in goes, we have some white sugar and some brown sugar. Now remember, the full recipes for these are going to be on my recipe website. You can click a link to the recipe website, to each individual recipe, in fact, in the description box below. But the recipe website, in case you're just looking for recipes in general, is brownfamilyrecipes.com. So I'm just going to start by slowly whisking these, or just whipping these together. You can smell that browned butter. It smells really nice. I'm just going to quickly scrape down the sides and the bottom of the bowl there. That way everything's really getting incorporated. So while this is working together and cooling down, which is already starting to cool down quite a bit, that's perfect. I am just going to mix together the flour, oats, and spices, as well as the baking soda and salt. So in a bowl, I'm just going to go ahead and put all those together in one bowl. Okay, now quickly, it's time for the rest of the wet ingredients that go in here, which is just a little bit of vanilla, the pumpkin. I'll tell you what I did for this pumpkin. It's sitting in some paper towels. This is the second set of paper towels that I've changed out. Basically, you want to blot the pumpkin a little bit so that you get a good bit of the moisture out. Otherwise, your cookies could be too wet. Start out with 1 1/4 cup of pumpkin from the can, and just set it into some paper towels when you measure it out, and then change out the paper towels one more time to get out a good bit of moisture. Once you have sort of blotted this and gotten it pretty dry, not super dry, doesn't have to be squeezed out. You know, sometimes you can squeeze things out in a towel. Doesn't have to be squeezed out, but just blot the moisture off of it. That way you get kind of just right, the just right level of moisture for this recipe. So once you have kind of blotted away the moisture, you should have about 1 cup of pumpkin left. Into here also goes 1 egg yolk. So we're just going to work all this together, and then I'll add in the dry ingredients as well. Oh, let me put a splash of vanilla while I've got it here. All right. Okay, so we've got all of our wet ingredients together there. I'll give it one good scrape before I put in the dry. And then for the dry ingredients, we're just gonna mix it together until it's just moistened. So don't overdo it when you after you add in the flour and everything. Here it goes. Turn my mixer back on for maybe 30 seconds or a minute, and it should be good. The rest I'm just going to work together by hand. Yum, this smells amazing, as you can imagine. We've got cinnamon in there, we've got pumpkin pie spice, we've got that delicious pumpkin and browned butter. Check that out. Yes. Okay, so you can bake these straight away. They don't have to go in the refrigerator or anything. As I said, the dough will be soft and sticky, so don't worry about that. We're just going to scoop these. We're just going to scoop them out onto a cookie sheet. We're going to space them out nice and generously, and we'll get them into the oven to bake. So I'm going to be using my medium-sized cookie scoop for these. So I think I could probably get maybe 8 on this pan. Let's see how we do here. Nice flat scoops though. Okay, I'm just going to put this many for experimentation's sake because I'm not exactly sure how they're going to spread and I don't want to ruin my first batch. So these are going to go into a 350-degree oven for 14 or 15 minutes. Make sure you set a timer. The edge should get slightly brown before they come out. So let's see how they do. And I switched to my bottom oven because I'm not really happy with the temperature control of my top oven at the moment. I have thermometers in both of the ovens, and the top one was reading 550 degrees when it was supposed to be 475 degrees. So I don't know. I think it's kind of set to stun right now. So I don't really trust it with my delicate cookies. And then next up are cupcakes. So we're just going to have to use the bottom oven at this point. The temperature looks like it's right in there according to the thermometer. So we're going to use the bottom now. I have another pan here. I'm going to load it up as well. That way we can just swap out in the oven once the first ones are done. You should get about 24 good-sized cookies from this recipe. So I am going to go ahead and load up this pan. When the other ones come out, we can pop this one straight in and keep the party going, right? When you take those other ones out of the oven, cool them on the pan for about 10 minutes before you put them onto a cooling rack because they're probably a little jiggly and wobbly yet. While we are waiting on the first round to come out, I'm going to get together the ingredients for the glaze. Okay, you guys, you should know I have just had a disaster while moving these from that counter to this counter. I dropped 6 of them on the ground. I think 6. I don't even know. The whatever's left is what I have. That's how many I dropped. I don't even know. And then I ate one. Don't worry, I ate one that had been on the floor. It's fine. It's all fine. Now it's time to get them glazed up. They are cool, so that's what you want. You definitely want them to be completely cool when you go to glaze them. That way the glaze will set on them really quickly. So do not purchase this rack. I have struggled with this cooling rack since I bought it. So don't go for this rack. I will not link it. I will not show it to you online anywhere because it is not good. It comes apart continually. It doesn't like lock into place or anything like that. So not a must buy at all. So I'm just adding into about 1.5 cups of confectioner sugar, about a teaspoon of vanilla, I think it's only 3 tablespoons of milk. Remember, the whole recipe is down in the description box, or at least linked to it. And then my brown butter had cooled from earlier and kind of set up, so I just popped it back in the microwave for 10 seconds. That way it would be melted and pourable again. So the brown butter's going in there, and we're just going to whisk this up and make a nice glaze out of it. So what we'll do is basically you want it thin enough where if you dip the tops of the cookies, they will pick up some of that glaze. So make sure that it is thin enough to do that, to accomplish that. And then on top, if you wanted to, you could always sprinkle on, once you've glazed the cookies, you can always sprinkle on a little bit of pumpkin pie spice if you care to as well. I like this glaze because it's got those brown flecks of brown butter in there. So it kind of already looks a little bit decorative. Okay, I'm just going to mix, mix, mix. I think it might be a tiny bit thick. I'm going to get a touch of milk. So I'm just going to pour a little drizzle and work it in and keep going if I need to. This will give kind of a crackly look over the top. If you didn't want to do that, you could always put this into a little piping bag or something with a very fine tip and drizzle it over that way. Okay, I think that's looking better. Let's try one and make sure. So I'll just take one. As I said, make sure they're completely cool. We're just going to kind of dip the top, shake off the excess. And this is what they'll look like. Very, very cute. All right, so I am going to continue on glazing up my oatmeal cookies. Let's try one. I have a piece of one, which I salvaged here. I'm going to dip this one into my glaze, but let's try it first. We're going to try it with the glaze. The glaze adds that nutty brown butter flavor. That's exactly what that glaze tastes like. So good. I am going to keep going on glazing my cookies. In the meantime, I wanted to show you how I made that cranberry nut no-knead bread loaf. So I started on it yesterday actually. So let's pop back in time so that you can see exactly how that got started. And then we will cut into that next. After we see the cranberry nut loaf, we're going to make those apple cupcakes with salted caramel frosting. So anyway, check out the cranberry nut loaf, how I got it started yesterday, and I'll see you back here in a few minutes. Hey there, we've gone back in time. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly mix up. This is the day before, about, oh, what time is it? 2:15 in the afternoon. So this is a perfect recipe to mix up in advance because it needs to sit on the counter for about 12 or 18 hours before you're ready to bake it. So the long ferment and proof time on your counter is what is going to really develop the flavor of this loaf and make it really nice and chewy and then crusty when you bake it. So do it in advance is what I will say. So we're going to go ahead and mix this up here. I'm going to do this by weight because I want to make sure I get it really, really accurate. A note about the dough in general for this bread, it's going to be wet and sticky. So just follow the directions that I leave you in my recipe and you'll be good to go. But don't question yourself if you're like, whoa, it's way too wet. Don't worry. We're going to get there together in this recipe. So first of all, I have about 360 mLs of water. All of the measurements will be on the recipe that I post on brownfamilyrecipes.com. So you'll have all of that there in grams and in cups, whichever you prefer. So just follow the recipe, you'll be fine. Into the water, I'm going to put about 21 grams of honey. So this is some honey actually that my neighbors gave me recently from their bees last year. So this is local. You couldn't get more local than this. They're literally right down the road. So about 20 grams of honey is going to go into here. I'm just watching my scale here. There we go. Just to add a little touch of sweetness and to give the yeast something to work on in this bread. So we'll just put this aside until we're ready to mix everything up. Now, I'll put my big bowl onto the scale here and then zero it out. I have it set to grams, that way it's easier to measure. We're going to add 390 grams of flour. So you can just start to dump. If you get too much, it's really easy to spoon it out. If you need more, it's really easy to put it in, especially when you're working on a scale with weights. So we're going 390. So close. There we go. Also into the dry ingredients is going to go the yeast. I just took this out of my freezer. That's why the top's a little hard to get off. So for yeast, we are going to use a measuring spoon. We're just going to use half a teaspoon of yeast. And just sprinkle that right in. So this is active dry yeast that I'm using here. For salt, I'm going to use 2 teaspoons. So this is a half teaspoon. Two teaspoons of salt. So I'm just going to really quickly mix together. We're done with the scale at this point as well. I'm just going to kind of give all of these ingredients a little mix together. We're going to add in our mix-ins too, which is cranberries and walnuts. I need about 3/4 cup of each of those. So about 3/4 cup of dried cranberries. Don't be tempted to use fresh cranberries because it would make this dough way too wet to cooperate. So just use dried. They're going to absorb a little bit of the moisture in the loaf as well. So you'll be good that way. I might need to chop these walnuts up just a hair. So first we'll measure out how much we need, which is 3/4 of a cup, and then we'll chop them up. So That I'm using a 1 cup measure, but I'm not filling it all the way. So we'll put this down on the board and we're just gonna give them a rough chop. These are halves and pieces, so they're not quite as small as I would want them. Now I don't want them super fine because I want to be able to, you know, bite into a crunchy piece of walnut in there, but some of them are big halves of walnut, so I'll cut it down just a hair. And if you're adding nuts to a recipe, always do what I just did. Measure the amount that you need first when they're whole, and then chop them up. Okay, I think that's good. So we'll just toss these in too. Give them a toss, and then in will go the liquids. This is a no-knead recipe, no stretch and folds, no anything funny. This strictly works on the counter fermentation time. So it's going to get lots of good bubbles in there and air pockets and everything just from sitting on the counter fermenting. All I mean by fermenting, I don't mean anything really weird or anything like that. I just mean that the yeast go to work eating the flour and the sugars in the dough. They expel air or CO2, so that causes the yeast to get those air bubbles and pockets in it. So I'm just going to use my fork to begin with and start there, and then I'll go to my spatula in just a second here. This is going to look rough and it's going to look wet initially, but that's okay. Okay, I'm just going to grab my spatula now and we'll use it just to bring every single thing together. Now that water that I used was a little bit warm. I just warmed it, you know, I just turned the tap on to warm water, not hot, and I am using bread flour for this recipe because you want a higher protein, higher gluten flour for this so that you get that really crusty exterior and chewy interior. Okay. That's it. That's all we're going to do today. And then now this is literally just going to go and sit on my back counter back there. I'll cover it with a piece of plastic wrap and a tea towel, and it can sit there for 12 to 18 hours. So for me, that means I'm probably going to I'm going to check it this evening before I go to bed. If it's really, really big and bubbly already, then I will probably put it in the refrigerator overnight, just so that it doesn't get completely overproofed in the overnight. Now, if it still is working away and I don't think that it's going to go crazy overnight, then I'll leave it on the counter overnight. But I will update you and let you know exactly how this goes. The only time I've ever made this before was in a full daytime period, like I mixed it up very early in the morning and I baked it in the evening. So I'm not exactly sure about my time period overnight. I just don't want it to be completely overproofed where it would collapse then the next day when I go to bake it. So I'll give you the update this evening on if I store it on the counter overnight or in the refrigerator overnight. That way you'll know exactly what to do with yours too. So just a very quick update on the bread. And you can see that it is already up. It's probably already doubled in size while it's been sitting here. It's about 6:30 in the evening at this point, so you can see it just bloop, released a gas bubble. So I will be refrigerating this tonight. This is what I wanted to tell you basically. I will refrigerate this tonight, but otherwise it will overflow the bowl probably in the night, and it will probably be way overproofed by the morning time when I want to bake this up. So I will be refrigerating this. It's no problem at all. It will still continue to ferment. The dogs are drinking water and the dishwasher is going if you hear noises. But it'll still continue to ferment even in the refrigerator, but it'll slow it way, way down. So just wanted to give you the update of that. So I'm going to refrigerate it overnight. Okay, it is time to deal with this loaf at this point. So I did refrigerate it overnight. I also took it out this morning about an hour ago, and I set it here onto the counter. So you can see it's really bubbly on top, lots of good bubbles and everything in there. So I'm going to put down a little bit of flour. Oh, let me get some parchment paper out too. So So I'm going to put a little flour down on my bench, and we're just going to kind of shape this into generally a roundish loaf. Then I'm going to put it onto the parchment and get it into the pot that I have preheating in the oven. So first, some flour. We'll just pour this right here onto my floured surface. Just going to dust the top with a little more flour so it's not as sticky here. Okay. I'm just kind of going to push the bottom underneath. More flour. And what I'm trying to do is make a little tiny bit of tension on the top of the loaf here. Okay, so that should be good. Now I'm going to put it onto my parchment paper. Crumple it so it stays in place a little bit. Just like that. Now, I'm going to get my hot pot out of the oven. First, I'm going to wash my hands. Then I'll get my hot pot out of the oven and put it into there. And I'll let you know how long it's going to bake. Okay, so my oven has been preheating for about an hour now while I was getting ready and getting all my things done around the kitchen here. But if you're still waiting on your oven to preheat and you take your dough out, shape it up like I have here, and put it into a bowl, some sort of a round bowl, until you're ready to throw it into the oven, because you want it to hold its shape and not just flatten back out while you're waiting to put it straight in. So I put that mine in there just to show you, but I preheated my oven an hour ago with the Dutch oven that I'm cooking the bread inside of at 475 degrees. So screaming hot oven. Make sure that you have the Dutch oven in there to preheat for at least 30 minutes before you're ready to bake as well. That way the Dutch oven gets to that screaming hot temperature too. So now I'm going to pull my Dutch oven out, take the top off, put the bread straight in. Oh, I think we do need to score it really quickly, so we'll do that. Okay, I have a little razor blade for scoring here. I'm just going to kind of put it into some flour. Now this is not going to be a beautifully intricate scored bread. All you're going to do is put 2 slashes over the top. So just as best you can with your scoring tool, put 2 slashes. It's going to be super sticky and wet, so don't worry about that. But I'm just going to put 2 slashes to make an X over the top, and then I'll grab my pot out and we'll get this into the oven. All right, we've got our bread in 475, so we're going to bake that with the lid on the pot for 25 minutes, and then we'll take the lid off after that and bake it for about 8 to 10 more minutes. So I'll let you know exactly how it turns out. Okay, my timer has gone off, so I'm just going to really quickly get in here and remove this lid. And it already is looking incredible. Okay, y'all, so before we get started, this is all my apple cupcake ingredients. We're gonna try this bread. So mine is pretty toasty here. I had to turn my oven way down. I think my oven temperature is just off though. So if you notice that yours is getting too dark on the outside, So even when I took the lid off of my Dutch oven, this was already browned inside. So what I should have done at that point is cover it with foil, but I didn't. So make sure that the internal temperature of the bread comes to about 200 degrees, because you don't want to have this really beautiful loaf on the outside, but it be raw on the inside. So make sure you check the temperature is what I would say. So I'm gonna cut some slices of this. Let's try it out. The bottom part is what is really crusty. All right, let's cut one more. Look at this. That's actually really beautiful. It is so, it's nice and moist inside, but it's done. That is exactly why you want to check the temperature of the interior of the bread. Because if you do not, you will cut into this and you will have done 12 to 18 hours of waiting for this bread to proof and rise and all of that stuff. And you will be left with a ruined loaf. So don't do that. Set yourself up for success. Get a thermometer, take the internal temperature. If it's not quite there yet when you think it should be done, just cover it over, as I said, with some foil and give it, 15, 20 more minutes with foil covering it. That way, the internal temperature, the inside will get nice and done for you. So now we get to try this, and I'm going to try a piece of this little guy here. I will definitely link to this knife in my Walmart storefront because it is absolutely worth it. It is so incredibly sharp. Be sure that when you put it away, in your drawer, that you put the little cover on that goes with it, because if not, you do not want to touch that thing with a bare finger or anything. So let's give this a try. I'm very excited for it. Let's see if it's got a good chew to it. The walnuts are great. It's really the perfect blend of a sweet and savory bread. So it's not overly sweet, but you get pops of sweetness with the cranberries that are in there. That is delicious, and it has a really good yeasty flavor because of that long proofing time. That's excellent. Yum, yum. Okay, now we're just going to really quickly mix up the cupcake batter for the apple cupcakes. So I am going to start to move quickly at this point because we still have to cook the cupcakes and let them cool before we can frost them. So I am just going to do the old dump and go method. We're going to let it blend up in the mixer, and we're just going to kind of let it do its thing. So I have some melted butter, 1/3 of a cup of milk, some vanilla, 2 eggs, my sugars. I have some granulated sugar and some brown sugar. While this is going, I'm just going to mix in the spices and the baking powder, baking soda, and salt into the flour. The cupcake liners that I got, these are the parchment ones. So there's some dark ones, some white ones, and some sort of natural color ones. I want those natural color ones, so I'm going to open it from the bottom here. This makes almost exactly 12 cupcakes. You may get 14 if you want to. I'm probably not going to do another pan because this is the only cupcake pan, muffin pan that I have anymore. And look at how hideous it is, honestly. Every time I go to make muffins, I'm like, why not buy a new one? But I never think of it other than that specific time, so I don't buy a new one. So these are really cute liners, though. I grabbed these off of Amazon. I can definitely link to them either on Amazon or in my Walmart creator storefront. I have a lot of the things that I use in my Walmart storefront at this point. I just think that it's a little bit easier because a lot of the things that I buy are from Walmart, and then you can just quickly add them over into your creator storefront so that people can find them there. So that is very convenient, actually. Okay, so now I'm just going to give this a quick scrape down to make sure that everything is mixed up at the bottom, which it is, and throw in the flour, and we'll let that mix through really, really fast, probably 30 seconds or a minute, and then this batter will be done. Just going to scrape down once because I do have some flour sticking on the sides here. I can't believe I dropped those cookies. That's so annoying. Oh, okay, and then we just have to add in the most important ingredient, the apples. So here I have one large apple that I've cut into pretty fine dice, probably 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch little chunks there. And this is just gonna go in. I had put a tiny bit of lemon juice on there so that they wouldn't get brown as they sat in my fridge. I'm just gonna mix those in by hand. I still have hummingbirds I can see at my window here. This has been definitely our best year for the hummingbirds. We have seen them go crazy. I mean, 5 to 10 at the feeders at one time, at one point. Right now, they have some of them have left, it seems. That's what they're doing, migrating, you know, so there's not as many anymore, but we had a lot of fun watching them when they were here in droves earlier this month. Okay, so now I'm gonna get my scoop out. As I said, we should get pretty precisely at least 12 muffins, maybe a little bit extra from 12. So I'm just going to start to scoop this. You want to fill your muffin cup about 3/4 full. I'm going to start with 1 scoop into each muffin cup, and then I'll go back and add if I need to. These are going to go into a 350-degree oven as well. They're going to take about 21 to 23 minutes, so set your timer when you put them in. A toothpick should come out clean when they're completely cooked through. Okay, so we have 20 minutes until those are ready. We're going to get back on the stovetop here because we need to cook up some caramel for the frosting. I've got my butter melted here in the pan. I'm probably actually going to turn this down. And I need my whisk and my brown sugar. We're going to add 1 cup of brown sugar. This is 4 tablespoons of butter that's in there. And we are going to whisk in this brown sugar till we get it all combined. Oh, I've got 1 chunk in there. We'll let this just start to melt together and combine. Probably take a few minutes. All right, I was just giving this a minute to melt. I'm gonna have to turn the heat up a little bit, I think. My cupcakes should be nearly done in the oven. Here's Clark to check in. I'm just gonna let this melt a minute. Okay, so everything is combined here, and you just want to make sure you're whisking so that you don't get like an oily separation around the edge there. And now I'm going to add in 3 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. Just gonna use this. I have it in kind of a shallow dish here, so 3 tablespoons will go in. This is 5 tablespoons total, but we'll save back 2 more tablespoons, what's left here, to when we're whipping up the icing. We're just going to work this in as well. And you'll start to see the sauce start to get a little bit more creamy now that we have some heavy cream in there. I'm going to put in a candy thermometer. So that's what this is here. And I'm going to put it so that it doesn't touch the bottom of the pan. So I have a pretty shallow pan here. So I'm just going to click it onto the side here and put it just like this. Now we want the temperature of the caramel to come up to 230 degrees. So let's see what we're at right now. Okay, my cupcake timer's going off. This is at 210 degrees. So let me grab the cupcakes quickly. Here's how they look. Beautiful. At almost 230. Okay, we are there. So I'm going to remove it from the heat and whisk. So this is the way it's going to look once it's at the correct temperature. We're just going to let it sit for about a minute before we put it into a bowl. It's been about 15 minutes since I finished the caramel on the stovetop, so it's cooled down some. Now it's not like room temperature or anything, I should tell you that. It's still pretty warm, but into the mixing bowl is going to go 2 cups of powdered sugar, 2 tablespoons of heavy cream, and then the caramel that we made. So I did put my salt in here earlier as well, and we can also put a bit of salt on top when we frost the cupcakes up. So all these ingredients are going to go into here, and I have my whisk attachment for my mixer. I'm going to use it. You could use a hand mixer as well. And then we're going to whisk this until it gets fluffed up. We don't want to overmix it and cause it to break though. I'm just going to scrape the sides down once because I could see a little powdered sugar sitting on the bottom. And then we're going to put it on high speed for 1 minute and let it mix. Okay, I should tell you, when the frosting is done, it's going to look like this. It's not going to be a big fluffed up frosting. It's more of a pliable frosting. So once you have it beaten up in the mixer, you do want to let it sit for about 20 minutes before you go to pipe it. So it will be kind of a little bit more firm and pliable than what you're used to, but it will pipe after it sits for about 20 or 30 minutes. So we'll just leave it to sit for a little bit, and then I'm going to grab a piping bag and we'll get these cupcakes done. After about 20 or 30 minutes, the cupcake should be perfectly cooled anyway, so that should work out. Okay, I'm just going through and frosting the cupcakes up, and I will show you when the frosting comes out. I'm using this in a bag. When it comes out, it sort of stays in place like that. So that's not really the look that I'm wanting. So I'm just smoothing this out with a plastic spoon. It doesn't stick or anything to the plastic spoon, and giving it a little bit more of just a more natural look rather than a swirl, because the frosting really stays put when you pipe it out. So again, I'm just kind of going through, smashing it down a little bit and smoothing it on with my spoon, just like that. If you wanted to, you could, now you can buy all those coffee drizzles like caramel and all that stuff that comes in a bottle. You could drizzle some caramel sauce over top of these as well if you wanted to go the extra mile, but these are so good.